Well, hello all. Welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. This is the very first EcoCast of 2023. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we had some new countdown music. We are all geared up. We are doing 2023 a little bit differently right off the hop here, including our very exciting topic today because we're talking about gearing up for SuperCloud. Now, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media. I am literally thrilled to be your moderator for this innovative conversation because the whole idea of SuperCloud, it's fun, it's exciting, and it's kind of still evolving a little bit. It's still kind of taking shape, and that's pretty cool. I love days like today. I love when we get to interpret a little bit. We get to discuss when things are kind of up for debate or discussion. We're playing around with a cool concept and maybe a little bit of building the ship around us as we fly because most of us are still sort of finding the definition of and maybe the use cases for the SuperCloud. We're still exploring a little bit, and I'm really excited that I get to be a part of that with you all today. And we are not alone in the fun because we've got two incredible teams here with us. We're going to be chatting with Rapid7 and Rubrik. They've brought along their top cloud experts who are going to run us through a few of those hot ideas, the trends, solutions, and strategies in cloud infrastructure, and why you might be thinking about SuperCloud at your organization. Okay, now there's a few housekeeping things that I want to go through in order for you to get the most out of your day today. And now I know that you guys know a lot of this stuff, but it's been a few weeks. I don't know about you, but I've had some very embarrassing things that I've totally forgotten. We had 2 weeks away, and I forgot how to do some basic Word document stuff, and I'm finding the gears are kind of slowly, dustily getting back into action. So I'm going to just review a little bit of these things for us and just make sure that they are top of your mind. Okay, so what looks like that little Christmas present there above the word prizes, that's a prize icon. We're going to come back and chat about those in just a moment, but I'm actually going to move your eyes on over to the questions tab in your audience console. Now, this is a great place to say hi, say hello, reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. We missed you guys over the holiday break. I'm so happy seeing some really wonderful and familiar names and, of course, lots of new friends out there with us. So tell us how you did over the holidays. Say hi. Let us know how you're doing today. We definitely want to hear from you. Now, that questions tab is also a great place to reach out to the Actual Tech Media crew if you do have any tech issues and you need a hand. Now, I do want to remind you that a browser refresh is going to clear out any of the usual tech gremlins, but if they're being a little particular today, don't worry about that. Just shoot us a message and we will be there to help. Okay, now most importantly, and I say this to you guys all the time, we want this to be an informative webinar, which means that we want to see those technical questions. So throughout the EcoCast today, we hope that you will get engaged, get involved in the discussion, and send in those comments, the questions, the tips, the discussion points, all of it. Not only are we going to have team members responding to you during the live webinar over live chat, we're also going to get to, make sure that all of those questions are sent to Rapid7 and Rubrik after we wrap up today. So that means that everyone who asks a question is going to get those answers back, so make sure that you get those in. Okay, two last things I want to point out in your audience console. The first up is the Twitter button. You're going to hear all kinds of cool things today, and let's be honest, SuperCloud is kind of trendy. It's a little eye-catchy, so you all get to be early adopters and trend setters on social media today. So when you hear that exciting thing, click on that Twitter button right there in your audience console, and that hashtag for today's webinar is going to be automatically added to your post. Now, the very last thing that I want to talk to you about on your audience console before we move on, it's right there next to the questions tab that we were chatting about at the top here. It's the handout section. So you're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today, as well as some upcoming webinars you can look at, Gorilla Guide, all kinds of cool resources there. It is really hard. I'm just going to remind you all, it's very hard to remember everything that you hear in multiple sessions, even if it's the coolest information in the world, which it will be. So make your life easy and check out those handouts, download them, save them, and make sure that you can reference back to them after we wrap up. All right, well, I kind of introduced myself already, but just once again, I'm Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here with Actual Tech Media. I am very happy that I get to chat with you guys today about SuperCloud, and even more happy to tell you that my wonderful fellow moderators, Scott Becker and David Davis, are going to be joining us here for a little keynote chat in just a moment. And if that wasn't enough good news, I said I'd come back to the prizes. So here we are. We've got 3 $500 Amazon gift cards that we're going to be giving away to 3 lucky winners here with us today. Now I'm going to remind you that you do need to be in live attendance during the webinar to qualify for these prizes. All winners do need to meet the actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. And if you're saying, that's great, Jess, but I've totally forgotten what those are, they're drowned out in eggnog over the holiday season, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that handouts tab. Just click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Okay, now I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we absolutely love getting those technical questions. You guys are just such an insightful crew and group, and we always get great feedback, comments, and questions. So we have an extra additional prize for the best question asked in each one of the live sessions today. We'll be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to that best question. We review all the questions asked after we wrap. So even if we don't get to your question live during the webinar today, there is still that chance to win. Now we're going to follow up with all the winners after we wrap. There's a few little reminders here on the screen in terms of eligibility, including that all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. And again, full T's and C's are there for you in that handouts tab. Okay, now I do know that as we come into New Year, a lot of you are out there thinking about ways to give back to your communities. There's obviously lots of wonderful ways to do that. One thing that you can consider, if you are a lucky winner here today, you do have the option to donate the value of your prize to one of the selected charities that you see up on the screen. Now, thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these wonderful organizations. So if you do want to get involved, this is a way that you want to give back. There's lots of wonderful ways to give back. This is just one of them, and if this is the way you want to pursue, let us know, and we would love to help you out with that. Okay, now again, we're very happy to have you here all back with us. As I said, we missed you all, and it's so great to see you all back here again. We want to make sure we're connected with you, so do reach out to Actual Tech Media on Twitter and Facebook. We definitely want to hear from you. I'm also going to suggest, if you haven't spent some time exploring the Actual Tech Media YouTube channel, please do that. There are so many incredible webinars, just really about any topic you can imagine, all there waiting for you. So do head on over there and make sure you subscribe to that channel. If you're looking for some extra content, you can also check us out on LinkedIn. There's some great resources for you there. And of course, the Gorilla Guide Book Club. So if one of your resolutions or non-resolutions, goals for 2023 was to spend a little bit more time reading, this is a great place to start. The Gorilla Guide Book Club is going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. This is a fantastic way to stay up to date in a way that feels a little bit more interesting and exciting, and you don't just have to scroll through the internet for hours on end. You can actually download these books. They're going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and hey, they're all totally free. So these are great resources. Please do check them out. Again, that's gorilla.guide. There's a link in your handouts tab as well. All right, the last thing I want to mention to you all, this is another fun way to win a prize and also to grow this incredible community. I just want to stop. Russell said he loves the Gorilla Guides. Awesome, Russell. I love that. High five. Thank you so much for sending that in as well. I'm glad you're getting good info from them. Okay, so the Refer a Friend program, you're going to find a link to do that right there in your Handouts tab. You're also going to get automatically redirected at the end of the webinar as well. Now, I want to assure you, because I get it, this is a concern right now, we are not going to spam your friends and coworkers. I know everybody's inbox are completely overloaded coming back from some time away. Hopefully you all got time away. And so we don't want to add to that noise. So we're going to send them an invitation to a list of upcoming webinars. If they don't respond, that's it. We send them one little reminder, and then we stop, and we do not continue to email them. So they'll get the first invite and then the second reminder, and then they won't hear from us again. Hopefully that's enough to convince them to come and join you, though. So, and if you send that referral in, both you and your coworker could win, or friend could win, a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month, so lots of chances to win. Be sure to think of somebody awesome before you head out today and send them an invite. Okay, well, that's it for the housekeeping side of things. Now, I don't know about you all, but I am very ready to start talking about the SuperCloud. Now, before we actually get into the sessions, which are coming up, I'm just going to take a quick pause here, and I'm going to bring out my friends and fellow moderators, as I mentioned, Scott Becker and David Davis, because we're going to chat a little bit more about maybe establishing a bit of a baseline on what the SuperCloud is. So just one moment, and we'll get us all on screen here with you.
Hey, well, hey, David. Hey, Scott. Welcome back from break. Great to see you guys again.
Hey, Jess. Good to see you too.
Great to be here.
Well, we're all gathered here today to talk about something kind of cool, and that is SuperCloud. And Scott and David and I, we are all very excited to get into this discussion with you all today and hear from some incredible speakers. But before we do that, we thought that maybe it would be a good idea to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page when we say SuperCloud. Because really, this is a relatively new idea, and some people have really jumped in, and some people are still maybe a little unsure. And when we started chatting about it, even amongst ourselves, we had a slightly different, understanding of the supercloud and how it could be applied. So I think, for me, what I had sort of been thinking about when I was thinking about the supercloud, I'm a visual person, so I immediately go to how I can conceptualize this visually. And so I'm picturing the cloud, and then I'm picturing this sort of like shiny force field layer umbrella, I suppose that's an abstraction layer above the cloud. And within that cloud, within that layer, it's sort of almost like super services, maybe more than super cloud. And it provides this within this layer an opportunity for all the multi-cloud environment underneath it to have sort of this like master command layer, this master service layer over top of it, which is really helpful. I was thinking about it with companies that maybe have started to find that they're getting a little siloed with their clouds, that each department has a different cloud. So, operations is kind of, the orders are getting placed with one cloud, but then payroll is getting paid through a different one. And so you have all these different things kind of operating within one organization. And then you have this shiny super service layer over top of it that's helping kind of bring some unity and maybe one viewpoint and data point for all of these different clouds. That's how I had sort of been thinking about SuperCloud. And I think we had maybe slightly nuanced opinions through our team as well. So David, do you want to kind of say where you were at in your understanding of SuperCloud?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the sticker that probably most of you have seen that says cloud is just somebody else's data center. And I mean, while that is true, cloud is just somebody else's data center. I think most of us know that there's more to it than that, right? There's all sorts of software and intelligence and APIs and agility and scalability and all this kind of stuff, cost control that goes into public cloud. So there's more to it than just that. And I think that SuperCloud is kind of the same way. There's more to it than just multi-cloud. One of the quotes I saw while researching this was that a supercloud is what multi-cloud should have been, or maybe it's what we envisioned when we thought of as multi-cloud. SuperCloud is kind of like cloud 2.0, if you will, to help us get to where we thought cloud should have been. So I guess my take on it, after doing a lot of reading and researching, because I don't think any of us really fully understood what this was. Experts still disagree on exactly what SuperCloud is in some cases. So my vision of it today is that SuperCloud is a permanent, abstracted away multi-cloud. So you can use multiple clouds anytime, easily, as much as you want, permanently. But that's where I'm at. Scott, what about you?
Yeah. So, David, I like that definition. Jess, I like your definitions, and I guess I'll be the third person in the room where we don't know like what we're describing, but we're each touching different parts of an elephant and describing what we see. So I guess I'm grabbing onto maybe the trunk here, but what I'll talk about is, there's a group that's been working on this definition, really driving it. They've got a definition on Wikibon, and in there they've got three essential properties of SuperCloud. And for me, they really helped me sort of understand what this is about. And so those properties, the first one is running a set of services across more than one cloud. And I think that's what both Jess and David were talking about there. So that's a key one. But then the second one is a purpose-built superpass layer. I really like that term, superpass. That's a fun one. But so that's, a capability that abstracts the underlying elements of the cloud layers within each cloud and then creates a common experience across the clouds. And then the third part is metadata intelligence. So the supercloud is collecting metadata intelligence from, say, AWS and Azure and GCP about things like cost and network bandwidth and just capacity and maybe compliance level of different services, and doing all that stuff independent of the customer, but so they can just contract for a service level, and the super cloud is handling all that stuff on the back end. So that's sort of the definition that I saw that was the most helpful for me on where we're going with super cloud.
I like that definition a lot, Scott, and I think way to grab the trunk. I think you've done a nice job of kind of summarizing what David and I had found as well. And I think that one of the things that came up, I'm guessing for all of us, as we, as David said, we've been digging into this and kind of developing our own understanding of supercloud as well. As I'm sure most of you out there are doing the same. So when we talk about supercloud, why is this new term coming into existence instead of just using something like multi-cloud or hypercloud? Why a new terminology or what is different about it?
Yeah, when I first heard this term, I was a little cynical about it. It really sounded like a snazzier term for multi-cloud. As a journalist by training, I like supercloud better than multi-cloud because it's not hyphenated. Hyphenated nouns are a pain to deal with, but as a technology observer, it's growing on me too. With a lot of technologies, you have this evolution. You have a good idea, and it builds some market share, and then some competitors come in, and they're all trying to become the 800-pound gorilla, in that market. And eventually, all those competitors realize they're not going to win all the share, and their customers are using technology from their competitors, and they need it all to work together. And so that's when you start to get to this interoperability stage where you've got maybe third parties working to connect, two solutions, or the companies themselves are forming partnerships to ensure their customers can do certain stuff. But everything tends to be pretty kludgy, and you've got a bunch of one-off solutions. And I think that's where we are with multi-clouds. You've got the hyperscale clouds like AWS and Azure and GCP, and there are various ways that those can work together, but they're also still trying to keep customers inside their walled gardens as much as they possibly can. And, so you think of multi-cloud as sort of those awkward efforts, that tend to be pretty labor intensive, like David was pointing out earlier, on the customer's part to force, these clouds to work together. So whether the term supercloud ends up being the word for it or not, it's an important idea for where the industry, needs to come up with standards that really abstract those hypercloud services so customers can work with them in the ways that they really want to.
I really like that point, Scott. And I think it's a good one, a good reminder that, as fun as it is to play with nomenclature and terminology, not getting too hung up on that. If you hate hyphenated words, or if you just don't like the word supercloud, to not dismiss the entire concept because the name maybe feels a bit buzzwordy or it doesn't feel like it's the right descriptor. But to kind of look outside that, and I think what we're describing here today is important and is something that's worth kind of considering more than maybe the specific nomenclature. But on that note, Scott, you just kind of teased out a few reasons why it's come into existence and why we are talking about this as a concept. David, I'm wondering if you could give the folks out there today an idea why they should be thinking about it. Why is it important, or is it important to be considering supercloud within their organization? What's the value add?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the most important thing about supercloud is this idea of just making cloud consumption easy and less complex, and kind of making it, perhaps what we first envisioned when we first talked about cloud. I mean, one of the benefits of public cloud, as I've described it in like my cloud computing course, is, the applications and data are portable from cloud to cloud. I mean, you can run your applications and store your data across, different clouds all at the same time, and you can just drag and drop, or you can create a policy to keep your data in the cheapest cloud that day of the week. But in reality, that's a great idea, but it's just kind of fantasy at this point. That doesn't really work in the real world. An image of a virtual machine or an instance from AWS, to Google to Azure, they're all different, and you can't just keep your data in the cheapest cloud, whichever day of the week you want, because there's a whole ton of complexity and logistics that go in behind the scenes to make that kind of stuff happen. And it's just not there yet for most companies. So the idea of supercloud to me is really just kind of elevating the benefits of cloud, taking it to the next level, to where we maybe dreamed it would be, in the beginning.
Okay, I love that. Well, getting to where we dreamed it would be is a good place to start our conversation today. I hope that you have all enjoyed kind of coming along as we get into the discussion about supercloud and sort of the basics of supercloud. But I think also, if you have a different understanding out there and a different way that you've looked at it, we want to hear that. So please feel free to post that in the chat. Let us know if you have either a link to an article or just a definition that you really like, and that's helped kind of made this clear to you. But also, this is a good one to really spend some time researching and exploring, because we are in the early days of really understanding what this is going to mean and what the value add is. So a really cool opportunity to kind of spend some time exploring. And on that note, I think let's get started with our day. We'll keep things rolling. David, Scott, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.
Okay, well, as I said, I hope that you guys enjoyed that kind of exploration, and we're going to jump into a little bit more in-depth discussion about supercloud, obviously, and get into our presentations in just a moment here. But before we do, we have a kind of a cool poll opportunity for you all today. Now, for those of you who come to these EcoCasts a lot, you can see that this is a little bit different than what we usually start with, because today we want to get a little bit of direction from you. We want to know, if you had your choice for some of the upcoming multi-vendors, so that's things like EcoCast, MegaCast, our summits, on cloud solutions and webinars that we have coming up, which of these vendors should we invite to demo their solutions? Now, this is multi-select, so you can select all the ones you're interested in. Now, I know that there's a lot of text and information on your screen. And one of the things I do want to very quickly point out, it actually scrolls. So there's a few tucked away down under the bottom. So if you haven't already, make sure you scroll down that poll list. Another thing that you may not have known about your audience console is that you can actually stretch that window out a little bit. So if you want to make that slide window a little bit bigger on your console, you can, and that's just a handy dandy tip too. If you are ever having trouble seeing the slides, that's certainly an option for you, so you can rearrange that window. I'm just going to run through this with you here. So, and again, multi-select. And there's no commitment here. This is just us really being curious. Where are you at? We want to make sure that we can get you the best information, what you need to hear when you need to hear it. So are you looking for something like ForcePoint, learning about central dashboards, maybe that one source of truth, that insight across everything that's happening in all your environments? Super micro, so advanced server building block solutions, and this is 5G, edge, data center, cloud, enterprise, everything. It's just a really good tool there. Intel cloud computing solutions, so maturing your cloud strategies, and this is private, public, and hybrid clouds. So if you are looking to kind of maybe enhance the cloud strategies you have, this would be a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about that. IBM Cloud Internet Services, so DDoS protection, global load balancing, and a whole suite of security, reliability, performance capabilities. Boy, are those three words important, hey? So if you're interested in something like that, that's IBM Cloud Internet Services. Cisco Cloud Solutions, so you're looking at cloud neutral solutions, full stack observability, gotta love that observability. So both seeing and managing your infrastructure and applications. So Juniper, we're looking at Juniper's Apstra intent-based networking software, which is going to ensure, and now here's a word I love, consistent and reliable data center operations across all your vendors. So whatever your infrastructure is, they've got you covered there. Atos, so Enterprise Cloud Advisory Consulting, you're looking at application transformation expertise, and I love this, pre-built cloud accelerators. How cool is that? So if that's something you're interested in, that might save you some time, some energy, some resources. That would be a good one to explore. Switchfast Tech, so cloud migration, security, data management, and backup as a service. Huge. Obviously, backup is something you should be thinking about if you're not, so make sure you're checking that box if you're interested in that. Accenture, so full spectrum cloud services to help you realize the value from your investments. You're putting time, money, and energy into these cloud investments. Do you need to learn how to get more out of them? So that would be Accenture. Magna 5, so this is 24/7, 365 managed cloud and data center experts. Gotta love that. So obviously you get to come here to these EcoCasts and talk with our experts, but if you need them 24/7, 365, Magna 5 might be a great solution for you. And OneNeck IT Solutions, custom cloud solutions, including hosted private cloud, on-prem private cloud, and more. So if you're interested in kind of getting into those custom designs, you haven't found the right solution for you yet, and you need something that's a little more tailor-made, that might be a good option for you as well. So again, multi-select, please do select anything that sounds interesting to you. And this is going to be really helpful for us as we move forward, making sure that we are bringing the right vendors to you, the right solutions to you, and some of these answers that you're looking for depending on what you need. So I'm going to remind you one more time, if you haven't already done so, scroll down, make sure you're hitting all the names on the list there, and check that out, and then make sure you've got those selected. Okay, well, I see some great answers coming in. I want to thank everybody who is taking the time to fill out that poll. That's really important and impactful, and you will see the follow-up because we will be responding back to you by having some of these awesome solutions for you to check out in the future. So get excited, and thank you for participating in that. Well, on the note of excitement, I think it's about time that we jump into our sessions here today. So I'm going to move things right along. Now, to kick off this super cloud discussion, we're going to be chatting with an expert in all things cloud and lots else besides. I'm so happy to introduce you all to Raj Samani, SVP Chief Scientist at Rapid7. Raj, thank you so much for being here to get us started, for kicking off the EcoCast today. Now, I know you've got a lot of information to cover with us. I know you're going to take a slightly different approach to the super cloud conversation today, which I'm very excited about. So I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Raj.
Hello, I'm Raj Samani, Senior Vice President and Chief Scientist at Rapid7. We've heard a lot about the supercloud. And in this particular series of talks, you're going to hear a lot about the benefits that the cloud can have. And in fact, the cloud can provide a lot of benefit to organizations. But the one thing that we have to recognize is not only are we becoming more capable as as society with regards to the leveraging of cloud computing, but equally as are the adversaries. In this particular talk, what you're going to hear today is a lot about the use of cloud computing, but predominantly from the malicious aspect. In fact, how the very tools that we use and that we depend upon are being leveraged for malicious gain. And also what you can do in order to be able to identify those particular connections that really should be identified and stopped as quickly as you can, because of course, we're going to look at the kill chain with regards to some of these attacks and where the cloud, as well as other legitimate enterprise tools, are used for malicious purposes. So let's have a look at what we mean by a cloud-native adversary. And of course, when we consider the cloud-native adversary, one of the examples that we want to leverage is the use of cloud within ransomware attacks. And of course, ransomware has dominated headlines with regards to cybersecurity for some time now. But actually, ransomware in itself is no longer the ransomware that we detected years and years ago, where an email would come inside an environment, somebody would click on a link, and then all of a sudden you've been encrypted. In fact, modern ransomware today really doesn't bear a lot of resemblance with regard to those earlier attacks that we used to witness. And that a lot is in part because we've seen a significant level of innovation from adversaries, partly because we aren't paying, or certainly I wouldn't say we weren't paying, because I certainly think organizations have been paying, and there's multitude of examples with regards to that. But I certainly think we've seen adversaries look to try and identify more ways to extort organizations for as much as they possibly can. In fact, you can recall, when Bitcoin was certainly very cheap, I think it was 2 Bitcoin, which was a couple of $100. We've now seen examples where organizations, demands can reach 10, 15, $20 million plus. And of course, that in part is due to the innovation. And of course, that's the leverage and being enabled through the use of cloud native adversaries. So let's take a look at this kill chain. And in fact, let's use the example that we have at the bottom of this particular screen, the Colonial Pipeline attack. And we know that that was DarkSide. And, of course, DarkSide soon became Black Matter. But as we look at the modus operandi of this particular attack, and in fact, of many of the modern attacks today, what we see and what we witness is this use of, first and foremost, an affiliate model, whereby there is this cybercrime economy, or this ecosystem. This ecosystem allows people with specific skills to be involved in the attack. And with DarkSide, what they were able to do is these affiliates who may not be coders and developing the ransomware, but are very good at breaking into organizations. And that's kind of what we see today with regards to whether it's Black Matter, whether it's Play ransomware. These types of attacks are enabled because this is cyber criminal economy. The cyber criminal economy itself has a multitude of various different components. And what's interesting is, if you look at this, a lot of the tools that they use today, well, in fact, a lot of the tools are actually legitimate enterprise tools. And that makes it considerably harder to detect these attacks, because they're not using known bad, they're using known good tools. And it's using our tools that we leverage and use every day against us. And of course, the likes of PowerShell have been talked about significantly, but also we start to see and use, or they start to see and use, the use of cloud native tools against us. On the right-hand side, what you'll see is the exfiltration component. And when we talk about exfiltration, that's a level of innovation that's come about because, whereas historic ransomware would be an attack upon the availability of systems, or the accessibility and availability of critical data, what we're now seeing is an attack on the confidentiality of such information. And it works, by the way. A few years back, I received a telephone call from a CEO of a very large organization, and they'd been impacted by DarkSide. Actually, this was just before Colonial Pipeline. And the question that they asked me was, well, should I pay? And of course, my recommendation was always, no, you shouldn't pay. But what changed their perspective and stopped them calling me, quite frankly, was when it was an attack upon the availability of systems. They had a backup recovery plan. But when they realized that actually all of their information would be publicly accessible and publicly available, all of their partners' information would be publicly accessible. So all of the organizations that they work with would be accessible. This would be a huge reputational impact upon them. And what they quickly realized was actually they had no choice but to pay in order to fingers crossed, hope that the adversaries won't publish the information. And that is enabled by exfiltrating data. But of course, the adversaries don't want the data exfiltrated to known bad, because of course, if an organization detects the fact that actually information is going to, for example, bulletproof hosting providers with known bad IP ranges, A, it could be blocked, but but B, the organization has the opportunity to be able to determine there's something malicious in their environment and potentially throw the adversaries out before they can conclude the attack. And of course, that's why we're seeing the use of legitimate tools. And one such that we're going to discuss today is rclone. And some of you may well be using rclone today because it is a legitimate tool, much like real VNC, for example, or even PowerShell for that matter. But what's interesting here is that the information is being exfiltrated to known cloud instances using tools that are used in enterprises today. And just a quick look at rclone today, what you can see, of course, is rclone allows you to back up and encrypt files to cloud storage. And it's not going to cloud services or hosting providers that we know to be malicious. Actually, on the contrary, what we're seeing and we're witnessing is the exfiltration of data to legitimate cloud services. And this is just a very, very quick snapshot of some of the cloud instances supported through rclone. And if you are, for example, an S3 user, how do you determine the multitudes and thousands of connections going to your S3 buckets? And how do you determine which of those connections are malicious and which aren't? Much like the enterprise tools on the previous slide, how do you determine that, for example, that real VNC connection is malicious as opposed to legitimate? And that's the challenge that we face in cybersecurity today. In the past, cybersecurity was all about blocking the known bad. Of course, that's why we had the rise of the antivirus industry. It was designed as particularly to block known bad. The reason we've seen the growth and rise in heuristics or the growth and rise in machine learning is because the objective is no longer, or rather, so the objective is to identify known bad, of course, but of course then the objective is to identify the known unknowns. It's the things that you don't know about. And of course, this is exactly the challenge that we face in modern cybersecurity today. And predominantly with the leveraging of the supercloud, most organizations today are more than likely to be using more than one cloud hosting provider. And as you use more providers, as you have more connections going to these environments, your challenge today is to identify the difference or identify those that are likely malicious and those that are not. And that's the challenge we face today. And of course, a lot of this is enabled by the fact that the adversaries themselves are able to get legitimate connections. If we stay with Amazon just for a second, we did some analysis recently to identify how many organizations are storing their AWS credentials within their GitHub repos. And you would assume the number will be limited because, of course, the keys to any kingdom are your credentials. And in fact, the Cloud Security Alliance talk about the misuse of credentials as being one of the key and top attack vectors being leveraged by threat actors today as they target cloud environments. So when we had a look and we said, well, okay, how many of these GitHub repos have credentials embedded within them? The number, and by the way, this was a number of years back, the number was actually really quite staggeringly high, 384,328. And of course, that number is probably very different now and it changes regularly. But of course, we have to acknowledge the fact that at this point in time, almost 400,000 credentials were accessible and available. And of course, that enables further malicious usage because no longer are we looking for S3 buckets, no longer are we looking for connections to bulletproof hosting. We're looking for connections to S3 buckets, and furthermore, we're looking for connections to S3 buckets of legitimate organizations who inadvertently may have made their credentials accessible and available through things like GitHub. And of course, that's not the only example of how credentials are identified and stolen. There are those, I hate the term sophisticated and unsophisticated, but there are the lower level attacks that are still ubiquitous today. For example, phishing. And all of this kind of drives us toward this perspective whereby, and this was taken in 2017, but when Gartner said 95% of cloud security failures will be the customer's fault, there is the potential of there being an element of truth to that. And certainly in the previous slide, we see the fact that over 400,000 examples verifying and backing up this particular claim. Now, we'll never know, of course, with absolute accuracy whether this number was correct or not, but we do know that there is a semblance of truth to this. And as I mentioned, we're also dealing with issues around phishing. And phishing still remains a very, very viable attack mechanism. I mean, statistically, less than 1% of people, for example, may click on the link. But of course, if you send enough emails, you get enough credentials. And that's the challenge we face today. And in fact, email and RDP, we talked about ransomware earlier, but email and RDP have remained kind of neck and neck with regards to the most common initial entry vector for attacks for predominantly ransomware groups. And so the challenges that we face today as we leverage and utilize SuperCloud, we've still got the low-level, common, high-volume attacks today. But equally, we are dealing with capable actors that are, doing searches on known repositories on GitHub, for example, not just GitHub, but other repositories to identify credentials, and are able to take control of legitimate cloud instances, and are able to hide within the multitude of various different systems that we depend upon. And we talk about this low-level attack surface as well, but we have to recognize that security teams today, whilst you've got these shiny lights of cloud instances that we're migrating towards, we still have a huge legacy to secure and protect. I mean, in 2020, it was cited that 25 million systems across the globe still run Windows XP. I'm sure that number has come down since then, incidentally. But regardless of whether that number is 25 million or 22 million today, whatever the number is, regardless, we still have a scenario in which security organizations are having to deal with legacy systems that we've got to maintain and protect. We've got to deal with instances whereby we're having to deal with the low-level noise, such as the phishing emails. And also we're having to deal with very capable attackers as well, all in the guise of the organization, the business demanding that we move towards the adoption of multitude and supporting multitude of cloud instances. And then, of course, that has to be done in the environment whereby we've got SOCs that are overrun, we've got a huge number of alerting that we need to identify and protect and investigate. And of course, we can't hire enough people, we can't hire enough staff. So that's why we're seeing the growth and rise of tools such as MDR, managed detection and response. So those are some of the challenges that we face today. And I think as we try to look and move forward and consider where we are today, we have to acknowledge the fact that we've got innovation coming from threat actors. We've got, in fact, this is actually taken from DarkSide. With DarkSide, for example, they certainly were carrying out development 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they had a huge team and a number of people that were actively supporting them. So that's the environment that we live in today, and not wishing to be the person that's only providing negativity or the challenge with security today, quite frankly, is the fact that we have hugely complex systems and hugely complex environments. There are, of course, solutions. There is, of course, research available. There is, of course, products and tools and support and services available. What I would encourage all of you to do is absolutely look and leverage the SuperCloud, or look at the cloud as a absolutely viable approach towards managing the compute within your organizations. It absolutely is the right way to approach things. But the cloud, I mean, they say there's no such thing as a silver bullet, and the cloud is just the same. The cloud is not a silver bullet to addressing and eliminating security. much like MDR, yes, it's a managed detection response, is a vehicle and an approach whereby you can hand over the management of your security to a third party. The responsibility, however, still rests with you as an organization. And therefore, the due diligence that has to be done is still imperative. But that's not to say that MDR is not a viable approach. In fact, for many organizations, in fact, for pretty much every organizations, outsourcing a lot of this is going to be critical and crucial. If you're looking at where you move and where you go from here, what I would encourage you to do is go to rapid7.com/research. We've got a multitude of various different resources and research available. Not only that, we've actually got an incredible arsenal of open source technologies that you can leverage and you can use as well. With that, I want to thank you for your time today, and thank you for the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm going to stop sharing now. And I have a couple of questions, so I am going to try to answer them as best as I can. So the first question that I have is, what would be the first approach with regards to, or what would be the, sorry, let me rephrase that. The question is, if I'm going to be looking and leveraging cloud computing, what would be the first thing that I would need to do? And, what I would answer for that particular question is, I'm going to cheat slightly and recommend organizations download and look at industry bodies such as the Cloud Security Alliance. I've been with the Cloud Security Alliance for a number of years now. In fact, I published a book on cloud computing, so that's certainly the one thing you can do. But really, the first paper that was published by the Cloud Security Alliance around the migration to the cloud really talked about governance as being a key focus with regards to migration of cloud or to the cloud. In other words, learn and understand the processes, learn and understand your risk appetite, learn and understand the business's approach to how you manage risk. And then you can start to consider what processes and what systems you can start to migrate and move over to cloud computing. Before you do that, before you actually sign on the dotted line, ensure and understand that you know what you're doing, and then start to ensure that you've got delineation on the responsibilities of what you will be responsible for and what the cloud service provider will be responsible for. From a GDPR perspective, from a data protection perspective, that's absolutely critical, because of course, you are a data controller and you will remain a data controller. And handing things over to a third party on the assumption that they're going to handle and manage everything for you is not, well, it's certainly not going to be deemed as appropriate by the Data Protection Authority. I can assure you of that. There is a principle, for example, in the UK under the Data Protection Act, Principle 7, you still have the obligation to ensure that the appropriate organizational and technical measures are in place. Thank you so much for your time. As we move over to 2023, I can assure you, as you're looking at these types of systems, as you're becoming more dependent on the cloud, Rapid7 has a number of tools, a number of products, a significant amount of research to help you in your journey. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.
Well, thank you, Raj, for that awesome presentation and for taking the time to answer some questions there at the end. Now, I know obviously there was a lot of questions that we didn't get to. I know Scott's been jumping in on live chat and chatting with some of you all who had some really great questions following up on the keynote, and the Rapid7 team is as well. The other thing I do want to remind you is that any of the questions that you asked today are going to go to Raj, to the Rapid7 team, so you will get answers back to that. Plus, you're still entered to win that best question asked. So I know we didn't get to all of them, but you will get some answers back. And there's a lot of questions around SuperCloud. This is a really exciting concept. And that was a really interesting, I like kind of coming around it and thinking about it from that malicious perspective as well. Not that we ever like to focus and dwell on the malicious, but hey, that's the world some of us live in, right? I do want to remind you all that there is a poll up on the screen, and what we're wondering is what additional information you would like to get about the Rapid7 solution. So you just got a great intro from Raj there, and got some really great information. And this is a sort of a way that you can make your life a little bit easier. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of doing everything I can to reduce some of the stress and the ways that I make my life a little harder for myself. So this is a great example of that. Instead of spending a bunch of time digging around trying to find the info you want, just click on that poll there and let Rapid7 know exactly what is going to be helpful for you at this time. Super easy and simple. So that's a great step to take. The other thing that you can do is, do you remember at the start I mentioned there was the handouts tab where all of you guys were posting your great questions, and I love that, but there's also, or the questions tab, there's also that handouts tab right next to it. So in the handouts tab, there is a link to Rapid7, and if you click on that, you can download the cloud misconfigurations report from Rapid7 looking back into 2022. This is a super interesting read. It's reviewing data from publicly disclosed breaches that happened over the last year, plus Rapid7's internet scanners and their honeypots. Spoiler alert, it sounds like a lot of the breaches were caused by totally avoidable circumstances. So this is a great opportunity. This is a new thing where people are really being able to, or willing to share a little bit more of breaches and things that have happened and ways that we can all learn from them collaboratively. So do please take a second, click on that link, download that report, and make sure you look over those totally avoidable breaches and see how maybe you could sidestep that particular mistake at your organization. I'm going to leave that poll up for just a little bit longer. I also want to say I'm seeing some great high fives and thank yous coming in. Faiz and Michael, I appreciate the high fives to Rapid7. I agree. That was a great presentation and an awesome way to kick off the EcoCast here. Speaking of awesome, how about a prize? I'm going to go ahead and give away a $500 Amazon gift card. I'll remind you one more time that you do need to be here present live at the EcoCast in order to win. Our very first winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Eugene Huang of California. Eugene Huang of California, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. We will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap the webinar today. Now, don't forget there's still 2 more chances to win a prize plus that best question card at the end of each session. And again, we're choosing those after we wrap, so we'll follow up with you about that. But don't leave us just yet, because we still have another awesome presentation in the EcoCast. And I think some of you are going to recognize this team and this speaker here because we've been lucky enough to chat with Robert a few times about cloud, and his presentations are always fascinating, so I know you're going to enjoy that. I'm very excited to reintroduce or introduce you all to the speaker and cloud expert, Robert West, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Robert, thank you so much for being here with us again at the EcoCast. I know today we're going to be talking about cloud, what's going on at Rubrik, and I can't wait to hear what's happening at Rubrik. So without any further ado, the platform is all yours. Robert, take it away.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert West. I'm a sales engineer here at Rubrik, based out of Austin, Texas. Today, we're going to be discussing Rubrik's offerings for securing your cloud environments. All right, so here are some of the objectives I'm going to talk you through in regards to some of the key challenges you may be facing when it comes to data protection in the cloud. Then we'll talk about how Rubrik can step in and help. At the end of the presentation, I'll walk you through a brief tour of our Polaris platform, where we make all of this possible from a single pane of glass. First things first, let's do a brief level set on Rubrik and the core value proposition of our platform, where it really all begins. First, we modernize the way that traditional legacy backup is done through our single scale-out software fabric approach built on a 2U 4-node hyperconverged appliance on-prem, which drastically consolidates and simplifies the way that core backup is done. We support all enterprise apps for this workflow with an API-first platform that is secure and flexible to automate, driven essentially by our SLAs. Out of the box, it's natively immutable through our append-only Atlas file system. So once data is written to Rubrik, it can't be edited, overwritten, encrypted, etc. We also provide a logical air gap by not presenting Rubrik over the network via standard network protocols like NFS or SMB. Instead, every communication is done with secure APIs. Second, what we will mostly be talking about today is that our platform natively extends to the cloud. Our software was designed in the cloud era with cloud in mind, where we can dynamically move data to the cloud, spin things up in the cloud, take a VM and archive it to the cloud, and protect cloud native assets. Last but not least, where we're going and our vision as a company is to deliver additional business value beyond just the core backup layer. We provide additional insights with use cases like cyber resiliency and data governance by making use of the backup metadata that we ingest. So think of monitoring snapshots for any anomalous changes or finding out exactly where sensitive data like credit cards and social security numbers might be out in the open. And we also provide you with threat hunting capabilities so that our customers can scan existing snapshots for indicators of compromise to help signal when an infection likely started in the first place. And that's the core platform in general. But let's jump back into why we're here, and that is to talk about the cloud and the challenges to managing and protecting that data. So here's a checklist and what we're trying to solve for here. 3 things. The first, quite fitting for today, is figuring out how do I solve for the cloud. We find that enterprises are trying to solve for data management in a hybrid architecture. So that means they're adopting new cloud platforms and even deploying multiple cloud platforms to achieve a lot of different things unique to that specific organization. Secondly, customers we talk to are trying to make it easier to run their digital estate. Automation is a key tenet to our operational efficiencies. So when thinking about your next data management solution, it's something that must be easy to automate and integrate into your existing environment. Last, but certainly not least, is tackling the security risk. Data security and being able to recover from ransomware plus data governance are top of mind for really everyone. A data management solution would be incomplete if it did not provide recovery capabilities for cyber attacks and region failures. Another problem that comes into play and has to do with the shared responsibility model, where one part of the setup is the responsibility of the cloud provider, and another part of it is the responsibility of the customer. But no matter what, when it comes to security, it's always going to fall in the lap of the customer. And because of that, they are seeking out well-architected cloud solutions. And because of this, it can become especially tricky if you're hybrid, multi-cloud, or operating at an enormous scale, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service apps. And here's the main challenge for those with existing workloads in the cloud. A typical cloud architecture often involves tens, if not hundreds of different account subscriptions across many different clouds and regions, which combined with manual job scheduling or painful scripting, it can really drain the productivity from IT teams. In the field, we're hearing from some of our prospects that they're having to set up all these different components around things like retention and frequency, then having to deploy resources within multiple regions for each account, where now you have to manage backup schemes across all these different regions. However, at Rubrik, we can help you solve this and ensure that your data is backed up and protected no matter where it sits in the cloud. Our platform can tie in regardless of where your organization is in its cloud journey, whether you're 90% on-prem and have a deadline to be in the cloud in the next 6 to 12 months, or you're born in the cloud and building all your apps there. So, we can definitely extend security and governance to the cloud for you. Our customers are all on a journey to the cloud, and thus far, this is what we have helped them solve. Rubrik makes it easy to archive backup data to low-cost storage in the cloud. We can also help orchestrate their existing applications into the cloud to accelerate their move away from on-premise infrastructure. And we also help to ensure their new cloud native workloads are protected. First up, archival. Most customers, if they have an on-prem data center and have replaced a legacy solution with Rubrik, will take an archive of their backup data and send it to the public cloud, maybe something like an AWS S3 bucket or Azure Blob. Our technology does incremental forever in the archive piece. So it's efficient with how we're placing the data in the cloud bucket. We can also automate that lifecycle of how the data tiers and when it tiers based on policies and storage class. This is all controlled within our SLA policy domain to dictate when and where you want your data archived. Because again, of all the metadata and how it's indexed, it's searchable. And if you need to pull back data out of the archive with our software, you can retrieve singular files without pulling the whole VM back. So if you had an archive living in an S3 IA infrequent access bucket, but maybe there's a document you've been asked to pull from 3 months ago, which is no longer in production, it's in the backup. Or let's say you want to set up an SLA policy that says you want to take snapshots every 6 hours, keep that data local on the appliance for 30 days, but then you also have a retention requirement of 2 years. You can then set up the SLA policy to reflect this need, so data after it's been retained locally for 30 days can automatically get pushed up to the least expensive tier in the cloud. We also, of course, offer end-to-end encryption, 256-bit at rest and at flight. Next up, cloud instantiation. This is a feature of ours that we call Cloud On, which is only available currently for AWS and Azure. Customers protecting their on-prem workloads using Rubrik usually implement this for things like disaster recovery, app migration, or an accelerated test dev environment from their existing snapshots on the appliance. Technically speaking, what this does is it supports conversion on an on-prem VM to an EC2 instance in AWS or a VM in Azure, irrespective of whether if the snapshot's available locally on the brick or has already been archived to AWS or Azure. It does this by converting the VMDK to an AMI for AWS or VHD for Azure, from which an instance can be launched in the cloud. Rubrik supports 2 workflows for converting and instantiating an on-premise VM in the cloud. We can do it on demand, providing flexibility of a good RPO, as an end user can go back in time on any snapshot and hit the launch in the cloud button, or you could choose to schedule this conversion. Once that is enabled, the Cloud On job will execute every 2 hours by default and convert the latest snapshot, last point in time snapshot to that particular image format. Last up is Cloud Native Protection. This is delivered as a service-based snapshotting tool available through Polaris GPS, which we'll touch on, which I'll show you here in a bit. This software is used to protect workloads that are infrastructure as a service or platform as a service in the cloud. Because some customers, after they've lifted and shifted or they built things cloud native, they want to make sure that they can provide the same level of governance and security. First of all, for this capability, it's software as a service from a configuration standpoint. There's no running resources like compute nodes or anything like that in your cloud account. All we're doing is connecting via API from our console, which is an aggregation of metadata. It's a control plane, if you will. We connect from that control plane via API to your cloud account, and you're off and running. Implementation usually only takes several minutes. So it's very quick to set up and consume. For scalable protection, we offer the ability to create a policy that spans hundreds of thousands of resources in the cloud by simply telling what kind of RPO and RTO you want. For instance, you could say, I want to be able to back up all of my cloud resources, whether it's RDS workloads or EC2 once a day. I want to retain that data for 15 days and then archive it out somewhere else. You could set that policy up and the software handles the entire backup and recovery process. We take a lot of the manual work out of having to go configure all these different components in the cloud. And 90% of the clients we talk to tell us that their cloud teams are launching and building things in the cloud really fast. And most times it's challenging for them to get a baseline backup and be able to prove to both themselves and internal and external stakeholders that the data is protected. And through the SLA domain, it makes it very easy to always ensure that you have a baseline backup. From a recovery standpoint, it's near zero RTO, just several clicks to recover. You can recover things across region and account in the cloud. Everything is searchable. and we present you with that data back very quickly. In terms of security, a logical air gap provides protection from ransomware, keeping your backups data isolated and safe in the case of compromise. And from a usability standpoint, we purposely developed a no-brainer approach. We have a point and click multi-cloud dashboard experience that the operator can go into, derive reporting from, have visibility, plain and simple, in a way that some native tooling from cloud provider cannot do. And then from the cloud builders or DevOps folks, we have the ability to deploy this as a code with a dedicated Terraform provider like we talked about earlier. So you can auto provision Rubrik up and down as you're launching cloud templates across different resources in AWS and Azure. It's really flexible in how to manage, and that's our cloud native protection at a high level. Lastly, I do want to show that we cover and protect a broad range of workloads, the most popular being EC2 instances, Azure VMs, VMware Cloud, SQL, and M365, just to name a few. We actually announced back in August of last year that we teamed up with Microsoft to co-engineer some projects with them, which in fact included backing up and protecting M365, which includes, of course, Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. It's all derived as a service, and the backups are hosted inside our own Azure tenant, providing customers with that logical air gap and the operational freedom that comes with Rubrik managing that setup end to end. I would actually love to show you this real quick when we jump into Polaris. And having said that, I'm going to go ahead and dive into Polaris GPS really quickly. Bear with me for a second, folks. So this is Polaris GPS. This is that SaaS-based platform that I've been talking about. Think of it as the manager of managers as it pertains to Rubrik. It's pulling in all the telemetry data that you're protecting with the Rubrik, whether it be on-prem or cloud native for Azure, AWS, GCP, or SaaS-based for M365. So for OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams, to give you a single aggregated view of your entire environment that you're protecting with Rubrik. As it pertains to M365 or cloud native, it's very easy to set up. So we're going to go to our M365 offering here. You would click add subscription, put in your global admin permissions for OneDrive, SharePoint, Exchange, and Teams. At no point would we store those credentials. We use modern authentication, so OAuth 2.0, to create that secure sync with your M365 estate. And at that point, you can start creating these SLAs and protecting these particular objects. So I'm going to go ahead and go to assign SLA domain. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to assign an SLA or show you the process of assigning an SLA just to Exchange. But know that you can assign a single SLA across all the objects in M365. You can also get very granular and assign it at the user level as well. So we're going to click next. Out of the solution, you'll have a gold, a silver, and a bronze SLA, but you can certainly create your own, and I'll walk you through that workflow right now. We can click create. And then on the left, we're going to be looking at RPOs. On the right, we're going to look at retention. So with M365, we can take snapshots every 4 hours. So say we want to hang on to that for 3 days, let's say a daily, hang on to that for 30 days, let's say a monthly for 12 months. Again, this is completely customizable based on your requirements. We're then going to click next, review the SLA. If everything looked good, we click create, and we would start protecting that environment or that Exchange object. From a recovery standpoint, it's super easy. The workflow is the same, whether it's on-prem, M365, or cloud native. You're going to be presented with this calendar view here in a second when I go to the user that I want to recover. And then we see the SLA that's assigned to this particular user, which again can be at the object level or the user level. So if we go back to, let's say, the 12th and we want to recover, click recover. We can either recover Aaron's entire mailbox to himself or to another user if Aaron has exited the organization. or we can crack open his mailbox and recover specific components. We also have the ability to provide you with a Google-like search functionality to search based on the actual title of the email or attachment to locate that specific email, and then provide you with various recovery options as well, the same recovery options. Original user to another user. Later this year, you also have the ability to download locally to your browser. That workflow is very similar across the board, whether it's Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams. We do have we have that download locally option for OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And again, that's on the roadmap for Exchange. As it pertains to cloud native, let's go to all, and we can see all the objects we're currently protecting within this Rubrik demo environment. So I'll just choose Azure specifically for the sake of this demo. Obviously, we protect VMs and applications, SQL databases, as well as managed SQL instances. And with these two offerings here, we provide point-in-time recovery, getting you down to the second, granularity when it comes to recover. Again, very easy to set up. You put in your global admin permissions for all of your cloud accounts, and we auto-discover your environment and provide you with a singular view of all your various accounts. Once we do that auto-discovery, you can start with managed protection. So we're going to select these particular VMs. Before we jump into creating that SLA, you click this ellipses here, and it gives you some options for configuring, right? So we can do file level recovery. So it does require some compute to be spun up when we take those. It's exocompute, so it's not always running, but whenever we take that first full backup, and then every subsequent incremental backup will spin up small exocompute within your environment to allow that file level recovery, and then we'll spin it right back down. Super cost effective. Also, out of the solution is going to be in a crash consistent state from our backup perspective, but you can enable app consistency. It does require our agent, but because of this, we'll capture all the data within memory too for that specific VM. So when we click Manage Protection, again, you have that gold, silver, and bronze, and if you hover over them, it'll tell you exactly what the RPO and retention is. But then, we can obviously create an SLA from scratch. So I'm going to select the object I want to protect with this particular SLA. On the left, we're looking at our RPOs. On the right, retention again. So say I want to take a snapshot every 1 hour, hang on it for 2 days, a daily for 30 days, and then a monthly for 12 months. We're then going to click Next. We have the ability to enable archiving. So, at a certain point in time, which you dictate, we'll tier that off to, very cheap, deep storage for long-term retention. I do not have a storage account associated with Azure apparently in this particular demo, so I cannot do that at this time, but you do have that option. We now can enable replication. So we select the region we want to replicate to. And then we tell the system how long we want that data to sit at that secondary site before aging out. Click Next. If everything looked good, you click Create. Now this is a demo environment, and I have limited access permissions that I'm granted here, so I cannot do it, but it's really that simple. And then lastly, before we conclude this, this demo here, I just want to show you our recovery options. So if I pick on this, I'll just select this VM here at the bottom. Again, you're going to see that same workflow. We have that calendar view. We see the SLA that's assigned to it. And when we go to recovery, let's see, I chose this one because we do have indexing available, so I can search. Based on the file name to locate specific files. And when I go to recover, I can recover specific files, traverse the folder hierarchy. I've provided, Rubrik provides that Google-like search functionality. We can restore the existing VM from this snapshot, or we can export to another region or account. It's really that simple. Unfortunately, I'm coming up on time here, but if you'd like to see a deep dive on Rubrik and all its capabilities, please reach out to your Rubrik sales team, or your vendor of choice with how you procure technology, and they'll get that call set up for you. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Robert. I know that I got a lot out of that presentation, such good information. I do really love that opportunity to kind of dig in with the demo. And I know that the audience was really enjoying that as well. We saw some great questions coming in. Really, and honestly, I feel like I say that every time because there's always great questions coming in. But I have to say the questions I've seen today are so insightful and interesting. And I think a lot of that is because, while we're talking about cloud, which is something we're all fairly familiar with, thinking about it from some different angles, from supercloud, from maybe a more malicious perspective, digging into it a little bit further, both the opportunities, the challenges, and kind of new evolutions is really exciting. And I love seeing all of you guys get into that. Larry just said cool tech. I agree, Larry. Definitely some cool technology. Faiz, thank you for the high five to Robert. I will make sure that he sees that comment. I do want to point out that you guys have a poll up on the screen here for you. Again, what we're looking for is what additional information you would like to get from Rubrik. This goes directly to Rubrik. So if you have a question about exactly the structure, how this might work for you, the solution, other solutions that Rubrik has, this is a great way to get that information handed directly to you. So make sure you take that second now and click on the poll, and they will send you the information that you need. I do also want to remind you all that I know, Robert, we decided to go a little bit long in the presentation, which meant that there wasn't a lot of time for Q&A. He is going to make sure that we get back to, so Rubrik will respond to all of the questions asked. So if you don't get an answer on live chat today, you will hear back from them. So do keep those questions coming in, and you are entered to win that best question. The competition's going to be fierce today, so keep those questions coming in. One last way to get some great information before you wrap up today is to make sure that you head on back to that handout tab. If you didn't already get the Rapid 7, make sure you get that. But check out the Rubrik link as well. There's an incredible technical white paper there, and it's how it works. It's cloud native protection for Azure VMs. So this is a great way to get to know the features, the architecture, and the workflows of Rubrik cloud native protection for Microsoft Azure or Azure or Azure, whatever pronunciation you like. It's really interesting information. Be sure to download that now and make sure you've got that to read later. I'm also going to leave that poll up a little bit longer because those of you counting along at home know that I told you that we would do 3 Amazon gift cards today. We've done 1, so that means there are 2 left. I'm going to give away 2 Amazon gift cards right now. One last reminder that you do need to be here live, present at the EcoCast in order to win. So our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Leroy Barrera of Texas. Leroy Barrera of Texas. And our final winner of a $500 Amazon gift card is James Liao of California. James Liao of California. So to review those 3 winners today, we had Eugene Wong of California, Leroy Barrera of Texas, and James Liao of California. California's had some bad luck lately, so I'm glad we're sending some good vibes back on over to that state. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Don't forget about that best question card. We will be following up with you once we've had a chance to look at all of the questions with Rubrik and Rapid 7. Okay, now, if you are here today on the EcoCast and you're thinking this has been a great time, I agree. I have also had a great time, and I would love to keep that rolling. So we would love to see you if you want to present on a summit, on an EcoCast, on a megacast, a webinar, whatever you have in mind, let us know. Reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and our team will get that conversation rolling. You can come hang out with Scott and David and I, and that's just a good day for everybody. All right, folks. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to once again thank both of our fascinating speakers from Rapid 7 and from Rubrik for making this EcoCast possible. A special thank you to all of you out there for attending, again, for asking those wonderful questions. I had a lot of fun today. I have to say I'm so happy to be back from break. It's always nice to kind of kick back and disconnect for a little bit, but boy, is it fun to be back with all of you. And it's such an exciting thing to be talking about cool things like the supercloud, what that means, what it actually is. I don't know that we've necessarily answered, I don't know if you guys feel like we've wrapped it up with a little bow and have nailed down supercloud, but I don't think that anyone really has right now. And that's the fun thing about these evolving concepts and these cool world that we all get to be a part of. So, hopefully we've given you some inroads into places that you can start doing a little bit of your own personal research from there. Reminder to get those handouts before you go, which will definitely help with that. And I also want to remind you, now this is not SuperCloud related, but in line with getting new information, please do sign up for the Ransomware Expert Series. It's this Friday. Scott Becker is going to be talking to ransomware specialist Alan Liska. If you have not heard these two in conversation, you're missing out. You absolutely want to attend this. If you have, you know that the discussion is going to be absolutely riveting. So be sure to sign up. That's Friday, January 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We're talking ransomware in 2023, what to expect and how to prepare. This is so important, such important information, and a really big conversation. So make sure that you sign up now. Start your Friday out on a great note. Wrap up your week strong, and join in that expert series. All right. Well, whether it's that expert series or another webinar, an EcoCast, a MegaCast, a summit, whatever, I hope that I get to see you all again soon. I can't wait to continue these conversations in 2023. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.